The sound still haunts me. That dull metallic thunk when my shovel struck something that wasn't dirt or stone. 3 feet down in my own basement, sweat dripping despite the November cold, I'd found the end of my marriage. Or maybe I'd found the truth that my marriage had ended before it ever really began. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start 3 weeks earlier, when Diana walked into my home office with the kind of careful composure she usually reserved for firing employees at her consulting firm. "Stephen, we need to talk." I looked up from the structural engineering plan spread across my desk, a new shopping complex in White Plains that required creative load-bearing solutions. After 22 years of marriage, I knew Diana's tones like a musician knows scales. This wasn't her "we're out of milk" voice or her "the kids need money" voice. This was something else entirely. "What's wrong?" I set down my pencil, noting absently that she was wearing the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 20th anniversary. The ones she said were too nice for everyday wear. "This isn't working anymore." She stood in the doorway like she might need to run, hands clasped in front of her designer dress. "We've grown apart, Stephen. We both know it. It's time to move in different directions." The words hit me like they were in a foreign language. I actually laughed, a short, confused sound. "Diana, what are you talking about? Is this about the Riverside project? I know I've been working late, but it's almost done." "It's not about your work." She stepped forward and placed a manila envelope on my desk, right on top of my calculations. Her manicured fingers, weekly appointments at that salon in Scarsdale, trembled slightly. "I've already seen an attorney, Rachel Steinberg. She's drawn up papers that are more than fair. We split everything down the middle, sell the house, no drama. Clean and simple. No drama. 22 years together, 2 kids in college, a mortgage we'd refinanced 3 times, her mother's china in our dining room, my father's tools in our garage. And she wanted no drama. "Diana, sit down. Let's talk about this. Whatever's wrong, we can work through it. We've worked through everything else. Your dad's death, my job loss in 2008, Brandon's accident. I've already signed the papers." She backed toward the door. "I'm moving out tomorrow. I've leased an apartment in Manhattan, closer to the office." "Tomorrow." I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward into the bookshelf. "Diana, you can't just— What about the kids? What about counseling? What about talking to me before seeing a lawyer?" "I've told Brandon and Melissa it's mutual. They're adults now, they understand these things happen." "Mutual?" The word tasted bitter. "How is it mutual when I'm just hearing about it now?" She was already at the door. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. The house needs to be sold. Rachel says if we renovate the basement, we could get another 100,000. You're good at that sort of thing." Then she was gone, leaving me standing in my office with divorce papers and 22 years of questions. Brandon called that night from Cornell. "Dad, what the hell happened? Mom called and said you guys decided to split up, but you sound like someone died." "I don't know what happened," I told him honestly. "Your mother wants a divorce, that's all I know." "That's crap, Dad. She's been acting weird for months. All those business trips, those weekend conferences. Melissa and I have been talking about it." Melissa called an hour later from Syracuse, crying. "Daddy, this doesn't make sense. Last month when I was home, Mom asked me all these weird hypothetical questions about divorce, like she was testing how I'd react. What's really going on?" I wished I could tell her. I wished I knew. Diana moved out the next morning while I was at work. I'd gone to the office because staying home to watch would have killed me. When I returned, the house felt like a crime scene. She'd taken exactly half of everything with surgical precision. Half the art off the walls, leaving ghost rectangles on the paint. Half the books from our shelves. Her clothes. Her jewelry box. Her grandmother's mirror. But she'd left our wedding album on the coffee table like some kind of message I couldn't decode. The house, Our 4,200 square foot colonial that we'd bought as a fixer-upper in 2005 became a monument to absence. We'd stripped it to the studs and rebuilt it together, or so I'd thought. Now every improvement felt like a lie. The kitchen island where we'd shared morning coffee and evening wine, the master bathroom with the clawfoot tub she'd insisted on, the window seat in our bedroom where she'd curl up with her mystery novels on Sunday mornings. I rattled around in all that space like the last person on earth. The grandfather clock in the living room, a wedding gift from her parents, ticked so loudly I could hear it from every room. I started sleeping in the guest room because our bedroom still smelled like her perfume, that French brand she ordered online. After a week of this, Diana's lawyer sent an email. Mrs. Caldwell suggests beginning basement renovations immediately to maximize sale value. She remembers you had plans drawn up several years ago. Mrs. Caldwell. Not Diana. Not your wife. Mrs. Caldwell. The basement plans. We'd hired an architect in 2018 to design a finished basement. A media room, a home gym, a playroom for future grandchildren we'd never have together. Diana had insisted we wait until both kids finished college. Let's not have construction chaos while they're home for breaks, she'd said. Now suddenly she cared about property values. I actually laughed, at my computer screen. Then I went to the basement with a sledgehammer. There's something therapeutic about demolition when your life is falling apart. Every swing of the hammer felt like progress, even if it was just breaking things further. The wood paneling from 1978 came down in satisfying chunks. The orange shag carpet rolled up like a dead animal. The drop ceiling tiles crumbled into dust that made me cough, but I didn't care. 3 weeks into the project, I'd cleared most of the basement and started examining the foundation walls. That's when I found the water damage. A slow leak that had been hidden behind the paneling for God knows how long. The bottom plate was rotted, and I needed to dig down along the foundation to assess the damage. I was 3 feet down, shirt soaked with sweat, muscles aching in that good way that meant I was accomplishing something, when my shovel hit something that wasn't dirt or concrete or pipe. A red Folgers coffee can wrapped in multiple layers of plastic bags, the whole thing sealed with duct tape that had yellowed and gone brittle with age. My heart stopped when I saw the writing on the plastic. Diana's distinctive handwriting in faded black Sharpie. Stephen and Diana. July 4th, 2002. Open. July 4th, 2022. The time capsule. My God, the time capsule. Memory flooded back like water through a broken dam. Our second anniversary, July 4th, 2002. We'd thrown a massive party. Probably 60 people crammed into our tiny Queens apartment and the building's shared rooftop. Everyone drunk on cheap beer and young love. Diana's college roommate Heather had suggested the time capsule. 20 years from now, you'll love seeing how wrong you were about everything. We'd buried it the next morning, hungover and laughing, in the backyard of the house we'd just bought. This house. Our forever home. We'd made a ceremony of it. Diana wearing my Cornell t-shirt and nothing else. Me in boxers and sunglasses, both of us giggly and ridiculous with love. We'd missed the opening date by over 2 years. Simply forgot. Life had gotten in the way. Brandon starting his junior year at Cornell, Melissa beginning at Syracuse, Diana's promotion to senior partner, my firm's expansion into commercial development. The time capsule had been buried in more ways than one. Now I held it like an unexploded bomb from a war I didn't know I'd been fighting. I brought it to my workshop, the converted garage where I did my woodworking, the one place Diana had never invaded with her need to organize and optimize. My hands shook as I carefully cut through the aged tape with an X-Acto knife. The plastic bags crackled and split. The coffee can's lid popped off with a soft sigh, releasing the smell of old paper and something else. Youth, maybe, or innocence. On top were our predictions for 20 years in the future. Diana's loopy handwriting promised 3 beautiful children, a vacation home in the Hamptons, early retirement to travel the world, and still madly in love with my husband. Mine, in careful block letters, vice president at a major firm, teaching Brandon and little Diana Jr. how to build things, celebrating our 22nd anniversary in Paris. We'd been so young, so sure, so wrong. There were photos from our wedding. Diana luminous in white, me looking stunned at my good fortune. Our first dance to At Last by Etta James. I could still remember how she'd trembled in my arms, whispered, "I love you" against my neck. Pictures from our first apartment, that cramped studio in Queens, where the radiator clanged like a ghost in chains and the upstairs neighbors' fights provided better entertainment than cable. There was the ticket stub from our first date, a terrible action movie she'd pretended to love. The receipt from the diner where we'd talked until 4 a.m. afterward. A dried rose from the first bouquet I'd bought her. The pregnancy test from when we thought she might be pregnant 6 months into dating. Negative. And we'd both been relieved but also a little disappointed. At the very bottom, separated from everything else in its own envelope, was Diana's addition. Written on the outside in her handwriting, just in case we need to remember. Inside that envelope, I found the end of my marriage. Or maybe I found proof that my marriage had been over before it began. The first item was a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines clearly visible despite the years. It was dated March 15, 2002, 4 months before our wedding. But that couldn't be right. Diana had gotten her period in March. I remembered it vividly because she'd cried in our bathroom, worried that wedding stress was affecting her cycle, that her body was betraying her at the worst possible time. I'd held her on the bathroom floor, told her it didn't matter, that we had our whole lives to have children. Behind the test was a receipt that made my stomach drop to my knees. Eastside Women's Clinic, termination of pregnancy, patient, D. Morrison, paid in full, $500 cash, April 3, 2002. Morrison, Diana's maiden name. She'd been pregnant. She'd terminated it. She'd never told me. My hands trembled as I picked up the next item, a handwritten letter on Goldman Sachs letterhead. D. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what you said in my apartment. When you told me you loved me, did you mean it? I know you're getting married in July, but it's not too late. I don't have to take the Singapore position. We could figure this out. We could have what we always talked about in college. Please, just think about it. Meet me tomorrow at our spot. All my love. Jake, May 15th, 2002. 6 weeks before our wedding. Diana had been with someone else 6 weeks before our wedding. The next item was a strip of photos from a carnival photo booth. Diana kissing a man who wasn't me, both of them laughing between shots. He was handsome in that Wall Street way, sharp jaw, confident smile, the kind of guy who wore his success like cologne. The date stamp read June 8, 2002, 1 month before our wedding. A business card fell out next. Jake Forrester, investment banking associate, Goldman Sachs. On the back, in Diana's writing, the one that got away. The final document ended me. It was a printed email from Diana to her sister Louise, dated July 1st, 2002, 3 days before our wedding. Lou, I know you think I should tell Stephen about Jake and the pregnancy, but I can't. You're right that he deserves to know, but telling him would destroy him and cancel the wedding, and for what? Jake's taking the Singapore position anyway. He chose his career over me, over us, over the baby I couldn't keep. Stephen is good and kind and stable. He'll be an amazing father. He loves me in a way that's safe and predictable, and maybe that's what I need. Maybe passionate love is overrated. Maybe settling for safe is the smart choice. I'll learn to love him the way he loves me. I have to. Please support me in this. Please help me pretend that this is my happy ending. Diana. I made it to the workshop sink just in time. My body rejected this new reality as violently as my mind was trying to. 22 years. Our entire marriage. Brandon, Melissa, every anniversary, every I love you, every night she'd curled against me in bed, all of it built on the foundation of being someone's safe second choice. I sat on the cold concrete floor until the sun went down and came up again. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. Jake Forrester wasn't hard to find. Managing director at Forrester Capital, his own hedge fund. The bio on his company's website mentioned his triumphant return from Singapore in 2018 after 15 years building Goldman's Asian operations. Based in New York, divorced twice, no children. The year Diana started her book club that met Thursday nights in the city. The year she joined that Manhattan gym instead of the Westchester one 5 minutes from our house. The year she started having weekend conferences and girls' trips that she'd document with solo photos by pools and in hotel lobbies. My engineer's mind began connecting data points like constructing a building from blueprints. I pulled up our credit card statements, something I'd rarely done since Diana handled our finances. She'd always been meticulous about it, said it was easier if one person managed everything. Now I understood why. The pattern emerged immediately. Parking charges near Forrester Capital's Midtown offices. Restaurant bills from places she'd claimed were client lunches. Always for two, always expensive, always paid by her because the client insisted on taking turns. Hotel charges on days she was supposedly at conferences in Connecticut or New Jersey. Our phone records told the same story. Hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize, starting in September 2018. The number traced back to JF Capital Holdings, Jake's company. Calls during her morning commute, at lunch, late at night, when she claimed my snoring drove her to the guest room. The longest call was 3 hours on a Saturday when I'd been at Brandon's parents' weekend at Cornell. I went to Diana's Facebook page. We were still friends, though I realized now she'd been slowly removing our couple photos over the past 2 years. Where once her profile picture had been us at Brandon's high school graduation, now it was just her at some charity gala. Her Instagram was more revealing. She followed Jake's account, had liked every one of his posts from the past year. Photos from Bangkok, Dubai, Monaco, places she'd always wanted to visit but I'd thought were too extravagant. On a sunset photo from Santorini dated 3 months ago, she'd commented, "breathtaking view," with a heart emoji. He'd responded, "not as breathtaking as the company." 3 months ago, when she'd been at that women's leadership retreat in the Berkshires. My phone rang, startling me. Howard Garcia, my best friend since college. My best man at the wedding that shouldn't have happened. "Steve, you missed poker night. And you're not answering texts. I'm getting worried." "I found something, Howard. About Diana. About our marriage. About everything. I'm coming over. Bring alcohol. The strongest you have." Howard arrived with a bottle of 18-year-old Jameson and a pizza. He listened while I laid out the evidence like a prosecutor building a case. When I finished, he poured us both generous shots. Jesus Christ, Steve. 22 years? The whole thing was a lie. Our entire marriage. She settled for me because Jake wouldn't stay. You need to call my divorce attorney, Frank Costello. He handled my cousin's divorce when she caught her husband embezzling. New York is no fault, Howard. It doesn't matter why she wants a divorce. Financial deception isn't no fault. If she's been hiding money, spending on an affair, that matters. But Steve? He hesitated, poured another shot. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes not knowing is easier. I already know. I can't unknow it. What about the kids? That stopped me cold. Brandon and Melissa. They idolized their mother. She'd been room parent, PTA president, the mom who brought homemade cookies to every bake sale. She'd taught Melissa to be strong and independent. She'd shown Brandon how to respect women. How could I destroy that image? But then I thought about them sensing something was wrong, asking questions I couldn't answer, being told the divorce was mutual when it was anything but. They deserved truth, even if it hurt. The next morning, I called Diana's sister Louise in Boston. I needed to know if she remembered that email, if there was more to the story. Stephen, she sounded surprised. Diana said you two weren't talking except through lawyers. I'm organizing family photos for the divorce, I lied. I found some old ones from before the wedding. Made me nostalgic, I guess. Oh. Her voice softened. That was such a beautiful wedding. I'm so sorry about everything. Louise, can I ask you something? Diana seemed nervous before the wedding. Was everything okay? The long pause told me she remembered exactly what I was talking about. Diana went through a rough patch before you got married, she finally said. That Jake guy from college really messed with her head. Jake Forrester? You knew about him? I knew he existed. Diana mentioned him once or twice. He was her first real love. They dated senior year at Penn, talked about getting married. Then he got the Goldman offer, and suddenly she wasn't part of his 5-year plan. Diana was devastated. But that was years before we met. He came back into her life right before your wedding. Mutual friend's engagement party or something. Diana. She got confused. But she chose you, Stephen. That's what matters. Did she tell you she was pregnant? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. She said it would have ruined your life. You were just starting your career. She thought she was protecting you. By terminating a pregnancy I didn't know about and marrying me while in love with someone else? Stephen, she did grow to love you. I know that doesn't help now, but I hung up. I couldn't hear any more about Diana's eventual, qualified love. That weekend, I did something I'd never thought myself capable of. I hired a private investigator. Paul Novak came recommended by Frank Costello. He was a former NYPD detective who specialized in matrimonial investigations. A nice way of saying he caught cheating spouses. His office was in a strip mall in Yonkers, squeezed between a tax preparer and a psychic. The irony wasn't lost on me. I need to know everything about my wife's relationship with Jake Forrester, I told him, sliding across a check that represented my entire annual bonus. I have evidence they've been having an affair. I need to know how long, how serious, and whether she's hidden any assets. Novak was a professional. He didn't judge, didn't console, didn't do anything but take notes in a small notebook. Give me 2 weeks. I'll have everything you need to know. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, came home to the empty house, worked on the basement. I decided to finish the renovation, not for resale value, but because I needed something to do with my hands while my mind tried to process 22 years of deception. Brandon called every few days, worried. Dad, you sound terrible. Are you eating? Do you want me to come home? Focus on your studies, I told him. I'm fine. You're not fine. Mom won't tell us what happened. She just keeps saying it's between you two, that we shouldn't take sides. She's right about that. Don't take sides. But there are sides? So it wasn't really mutual? I couldn't answer that. Not yet. Novak's report, when it came, was worse than I'd imagined. He'd documented everything with the thoroughness of someone building a legal case. Diana and Jake had reconnected at their college's 25th reunion in September 2018. The Marriott in Philadelphia had them in adjoining rooms. Security footage from Jake's apartment building on the Upper East Side showed Diana entering and leaving at all hours, sometimes staying overnight when I thought she was at conferences. But the worst part was the financial deception. Diana had opened a secret investment account in 2019, funded with the bonuses she'd told me went to the kids' college funds. Current balance, $147,000. Jake was listed as her financial advisor, despite not being licensed for retail clients. The account was clearly her exit fund, her escape plan funded with money that should have been ours. There was more. Medical records from 2019 showed Diana had a pregnancy scare at age 42. She'd gone to a Manhattan clinic, not her regular doctor. The pregnancy test was negative, but the visit notes mentioned patient expressed relief regarding negative result and discussed future contraception options with new partner. New partner. While I was at home thinking we were trying to rekindle things as empty nesters. There's something else, Novak said, sliding another folder across his desk. Jake Forrester has a pattern. His first marriage to Yuki Tanaka ended when he left her for another woman. His second to Brittany Walsh ended when he had an affair with a client's wife. Your wife would be relationship number 4. You think he'll leave her too? He's already been seen with someone else, 28-year-old analyst at his firm, Emma Garcia. They were photographed together at a charity gala last week. Your wife wasn't there. I thought about Diana's confident exit from our marriage, her certainty that she was moving towards something better. She'd blown up our life for a man who was already moving on. That night, I sat in my workshop with boxes of evidence spread across my workbench. 22 years of marriage reduced to financial records and surveillance photos. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana, the first direct contact since she'd left. My lawyer says you've hired a private investigator. Please don't make this uglier than it needs to be. Think of the children. Think of the children. The children she'd lied to about our separation. The children she'd been prepared to leave without explanation. The children who might not exist if she hadn't terminated her pregnancy with Jake and needed to quickly prove she could have kids with me. I texted back, "Set up a mediation meeting. We need to talk." The mediation was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. at Diana's attorney's office in White Plains. I arrived early, carrying a banker's box. Rachel Steinberg's assistant showed me to a conference room with a view of the Hudson River. I set the Folgers coffee can in the center of the polished table, like a centerpiece at the world's worst dinner party. Diana arrived precisely at 2, dressed in the black Armani suit she wore for major presentations. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, but when she saw the coffee can, all color drained from her face. "Where did you find that?" "In the basement, where we buried it." July 5th, 2002. The morning after our anniversary party. You wore my Cornell shirt and nothing else. We were so hungover we had to take breaks while digging. You said burying it was like planting our future, remember? Rachel Steinberg looked confused. "What is this?" "Our time capsule," I said, never taking my eyes off Diana. "We were supposed to open it on July 4th, 2022. We forgot. Life got in the way. But isn't it funny how things have a way of surfacing when they need to?" I opened the can slowly, pulling out each item with deliberate care. The predictions. Diana's face crumbled a little when I read hers aloud. The photos from our wedding. She closed her eyes. Then I pulled out the envelope marked, "Just in case we need to remember." "Diana, don't," she started, but it was too late. I laid out the pregnancy test, the termination receipt, Jake's letter, the carnival photos. Finally, the email to Louise. "You were pregnant with another man's child when you married me." My voice was steadier than I felt. "You chose me because I was safe. Because Jake wouldn't stay. Our entire marriage was built on me being your second choice." Rachel tried to regain control. "Whatever happened before the marriage isn't relevant to current divorce proceedings?" "The financial deception is," Frank Costello interrupted, pulling out Novak's reports. "The hidden account. The bonuses diverted from family college funds. The money spent on maintaining an affair for 4 years. We're looking at significant financial infidelity." Diana's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. Tears ran down her face, ruining her makeup, making her look more real than she had in years. "Stephen, She stopped, started again. "Yes, I was with Jake before our wedding. Yes, I was pregnant. Yes, I terminated it because he wouldn't stay. But I did love you. Maybe not the same way at first, but I grew to love you. When? I asked. When exactly did that happen? After Brandon was born? After Melissa? Or was it just comfortable enough that you stopped thinking about Jake until he came back? She opened her mouth, closed it. The silence was answer enough. Were you ever going to tell me? If Jake had stayed in 2002, would you have called off our wedding? I don't know, she whispered. You do know. You just don't want to say it out loud. Rachel tried to salvage something. We can work out an equitable distribution. Equitable? I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. I was her safety net for 22 years. She built an exit fund while I was planning our retirement. She was in Jake's bed while I was at Brandon's soccer games, Melissa's recitals. What's equitable about any of this? I never meant for it to happen this way, Diana said. When Jake came back, you remembered what actual love felt like, and you realized you'd been pretending with me for 2 decades. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me the truth before we got married. Fair would have been not terminating a pregnancy without telling me. Fair would have been admitting you reconnected with Jake in 2018, instead of gaslighting me about book clubs and conferences for 4 years. The mediation collapsed completely. Diana's parents, Carl and Patricia, were in the waiting room. She'd brought them for emotional support, not knowing I'd bring the truth. When we emerged, Diana in tears, me stone-faced, Carl took one look at his daughter and knew something was catastrophically wrong. Diana, what did you do? She couldn't meet his eyes. Daddy, we should go, Patricia said quickly, but Carl wasn't moving. I want to know what happened. Diana. I made mistakes, Diana whispered. 22 years of mistakes, I said. Ask her about Jake Forrester. Carl's face went white. Jake? That boy from college? Diana, tell me you didn't… We should discuss this privately, Rachel Steinberg interjected. Privately? I laughed. Like the private account with $147,000 she hid? Like the private affair she's been having since 2018? Like the private pregnancy she terminated before our wedding? There's been enough privacy. Carl looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Patricia was crying. Diana stood between them like a child caught in a lie, which is exactly what she was. We're leaving, Patricia said, taking Diana's arm. Carl, come on. As they left, Carl turned back to me. Stephen, I'm sorry. We didn't know. I know you didn't. Neither did I. Word spread quickly. In a community like ours, secrets don't stay secret. Brandon called that night, furious. Mom's affair is all over campus. Someone's parent works at the mediator's office. Is it true? Has she been cheating on you? Brandon, just tell me the truth, Dad. Everyone else is. So I told him. Not everything. I couldn't bear to tell him about the pregnancy, about how his very existence might have been Diana's way of proving she could have children with me after terminating Jake's. But I told him about the affair, about Jake, about the financial deception. 4 years? His voice broke. She's been lying to us for 4 years? She's been lying to me for 22. But Brandon, she's still your mother. This is between her and me. No, it's not. She made us accomplices. All those times she said she was at conferences, we believed her. All those weekends away, we covered for her without knowing it. Melissa and I were her alibis. Melissa's reaction was quieter, but no less devastating. She came home from Syracuse the next weekend, ostensibly to get winter clothes, but really to understand what had happened to her family. I need to see it, she said. The evidence. I need to understand. Against Frank's advice, I showed her everything. She went through it methodically, like the journalism student she was, asking questions, taking notes. When she got to the email about settling for safety, she broke down. So our whole family was fake? Everything I thought I knew about love, about marriage, It was all a lie. No, I said, pulling her close. Our family was real. You and Brandon are real. The love I have for you both is real. Your mother loves you. That's real too. It's just complicated. It's not complicated, Dad. She chose security over love and then threw it away when love came back. That's not complicated. It's cruel. Both kids chose to live with me. Diana fought it initially, but when Brandon told the court-appointed mediator about feeling used as an alibi, and Melissa testified about Diana's systematic deception, the judge didn't hesitate. Diana got standard visitation, every other weekend, alternating holidays, but the damage was done. The divorce proceedings turned ugly despite everyone's best intentions. Diana's hidden account was frozen by court order. The forensic accountant traced 4 years of financial deception, personal purchases disguised as business expenses, bonuses diverted, credit cards I didn't know existed. The total approached $200,000. Judge Harold Washington, a man who'd overseen hundreds of divorces, seemed genuinely shocked by the scope of the deception. During Diana's testimony, when she was forced to admit to the affair, the pregnancy, the termination, the financial fraud, he actually removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes like he was trying to unsee what he was hearing. Jake was subpoenaed but pleaded the fifth. Apparently, his financial advice to Diana crossed some legal lines. His lawyer argued spousal privilege, which would have been funny if it weren't so insulting. The 28-year-old analyst, Emma Garcia, was photographed leaving his apartment the morning of the hearing. Diana saw the photo on page 6. The look on her face. I'd never seen her that devastated, not even when her father had his heart attack. The judge's ruling reflected his disgust. I got the house entirely. Diana's lawyer argued it was worth $1.2 million and should be split. But the judge noted that I'd done most of the renovation work myself and Diana had been planning to force a sale anyway. The hidden account was forfeited to me as compensation for the financial fraud. Our retirement accounts were split 70-30 in my favor. Diana kept her car, her personal belongings, and her jewelry, but little else. Mrs. Caldwell, the judge said in his ruling, you entered into marriage through deception, maintained it through lies, and ended it for an affair that began while you were still married. You systematically defrauded your husband of both money and truth. This court finds your behavior unconscionable. Diana left court looking hollow. Jake was nowhere to be seen. Novak later told me he'd been spotted at Teterboro Airport boarding a private jet to Switzerland. Business, supposedly, though Emma Garcia was with him. Diana's Manhattan apartment, the symbol of her new life, was now unaffordable. The management position she'd been angling for at her firm was quietly withdrawn. Nobody said it was because of the very public divorce, but everyone knew. At 45, she moved back with her parents in Connecticut. Her LinkedIn profile still said senior consultant, but Novak mentioned she'd been moved to part-time. I kept the time capsule, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the past isn't always what it seems. I added new items to it. The divorce decree, a photo of me with Brandon and Melissa after the trial, a letter to my future self about surviving betrayal. I reburied it in the backyard with a new date. Open when ready to fully let go. The house felt different without Diana's ghost haunting it. I finished the basement renovation. It became a workshop and gym, spaces that were entirely mine with no memories attached. Brandon came home from Cornell most weekends, and Melissa transferred to Purchase College to be closer. We formed a new kind of family, smaller but more honest. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Diana wrote me a letter, an actual letter, on her monogrammed stationery that she must have taken from her office. Stephen, I've been in therapy twice a week since the divorce. Dr. Reeves, yes, the same one you're seeing, he mentioned you were a client but nothing more, has helped me understand some things. I was never in love with you the way you were with me. I loved you, yes, but it was a different kind of love. Safe love. Comfortable love. The kind that doesn't keep you up at night or make your heart race. I convinced myself that was better, more sustainable. I was wrong. When Jake came back, I felt alive again for the first time in 20 years. It was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed everything for it. And the worst part? He's already moved on. He was probably already moving on while I was destroying our marriage for him. I know you can never forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me. But I need you to know that the good moments, Brandon's first steps, Melissa's piano recitals, the trip to Yellowstone, Christmas mornings, those were real. I was present for those, even if my heart was divided. I'm sorry for the 22 years of deception. I'm sorry for choosing safety over truth. I'm sorry for not being brave enough to love you the way you deserved or honest enough to admit I couldn't. Diana. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Dr. Reeves and I talked about it in therapy. How does it make you feel? He asked. Empty, I said. Not angry anymore, just empty. Like she's apologizing for breaking something that never existed. Your marriage existed. Your feelings were real. But it was built on a lie. How can something real be built on something false? The same way a building can be constructed on flawed ground. The building is still real, even if the foundation is compromised. But once you know the foundation is bad, you can't live in the building anymore. No, he agreed. You can't. But you can salvage the materials and build something new. That became my project, building something new. I started dating about a year after the divorce, tentatively and with massive trust issues. The first woman I went out with, Carol from my engineering firm, noticed I kept checking her phone when it buzzed. Waiting for me to get a text from my secret boyfriend? She asked, not unkindly. I'm sorry, my ex-wife. I know about Diana. Everyone knows. And I'm not her. We didn't make it past 3 dates, but she was right. Not everyone was Diana. 2 years after the divorce, I met Grace at a grief support group. I'd started going because Dr. Reeves said I was grieving the marriage I thought I'd had. Grace was there because her husband had died in a car accident, leaving her with 2 teenage sons and a mountain of debt he'd hidden from her. At least your husband's lies died with him, I said after one meeting, then immediately apologized. That was horrible. I'm sorry. No, you're right, she said. I get to keep my good memories. You had yours stolen. That might be worse. We started having coffee after meetings, then dinner with our kids. Her boys, Marcus and David, were easygoing kids who'd learned early that life wasn't fair, but you kept going anyway. They got along with Brandon and Melissa, bonding over their parents' spectacular relationship failures. Grace and I took things slowly, almost comically so. We dated for a year before becoming intimate, 2 years before moving in together, 3 before getting married. Our wedding was small, just our kids, a few friends, my brother Gregory as best man. No time capsule, no predictions about the future, just promises to be honest, even when it hurt. I promise to tell you if I'm unhappy instead of having an affair, Grace said in her vows, getting a shocked laugh from the small crowd. I promise to actually notice if you're unhappy, I replied. Diana wasn't invited, obviously, but she sent a card. Wishing you the happiness you deserve. I threw it away unopened. Melissa told me what it said after fishing it out of the trash. You should have left it in there, I told her. I was curious if she'd apologize again. She's apologized enough. It doesn't change anything. Diana came to Brandon's wedding 3 years later. She sat in the 3rd row on the bride's side. Brandon had placed her there deliberately, close enough to see but not in the family section. She'd aged in those 5 years, her perfectly maintained exterior showing cracks. The designer clothes were gone, replaced with off-the-rack professional wear. The weekly salon appointments had become monthly, maybe less. She looked like what she was, a middle-aged woman who'd gambled everything on passion and lost. During the reception, she approached me at the bar. Stephen, Diana. Grace seems lovely. She is. The boys, too. Marcus gave a beautiful speech. He's a good kid. We stood there awkwardly. Two people who'd shared 22 years and now had nothing to say. I'm seeing someone, she offered. Robert. He's an accountant. Divorced, 2 kids. That's nice. It's stable, safe. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, right? If you say so. Stephen, Diana, don't. Brandon's happy today. Let's leave it at that. She nodded, walked away. Later, I saw her dancing with Brandon, both of them crying a little. Whatever they said, he seemed lighter afterward. She apologized, he told me later. For everything. For choosing Jake. For lying. For making me feel responsible for covering for her. She said she knew she couldn't fix it, but wanted me to know she was sorry. How do you feel about that? Like it's 20 years too late, but also, I don't know. Maybe it's something. Melissa was less forgiving. She'd written a series of articles about financial infidelity in marriage that won a journalism award. She'd interviewed Diana for one piece, though she didn't identify her as her mother. She actually said she thought hiding the money was justified because she was unhappy, Melissa told me. Like unhappiness is a blank check for deception. People rationalize terrible behavior. It's how they live with themselves. How did you live with it? The not knowing? I didn't know I was living with it. That's the point of deception. The deceived don't know they're being deceived. But there must have been signs. There were, of course. Diana's sudden interest in fitness in 2018. The new underwear that appeared in her drawer. The way she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner. The decreased intimacy that she blamed on menopause. The emotional distance she attributed to work stress. 1,000 small betrayals I'd explained away because the alternative, that my wife was having an affair, was unthinkable. There were signs, I admitted, but I didn't want to see them. The truth would have required action, and I was comfortable in the lie. So you were lying to yourself too? In a way, yes. Diana wasn't the only one who chose safety over truth. I chose ignorance over confrontation. 5 years after finding the time capsule, Jake Forrester was arrested for securities fraud. The SEC had been investigating him for years, and Diana's hidden account had been a small piece of a much larger puzzle. She had to testify, admitting to taking his financial advice, moving money on his recommendation. She wasn't charged, but the association destroyed what was left of her professional reputation. Jake got 7 years in federal prison. The 28-year-old analyst, Emma Garcia, gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal about how he'd manipulated her, used her, abandoned her when the investigation started. The pattern Novak had identified continued. Jake destroyed every woman who loved him, including Diana. Diana sent me the news article with a 2-word note. You won. I wrote back. My first response to any of her attempts at communication. Nobody won. Everybody lost. That's what happens when you build on lies. The time capsule remains buried in the backyard of our old house. The new owners, a young family with twin daughters, don't know it's there. Sometimes I drive by and wonder if they'll find it someday, if they'll piece together the story of the family that lived there before. I wonder if they'll learn from our mistakes or if they're destined to repeat them. Brandon and his wife Amy just had their first child, a daughter named Sophie. When they brought her to meet us, Brandon pulled me aside. Dad, Amy and I have been talking. We want to be radically honest with each other. No secrets, no hidden accounts, no secret friendships. We've seen what deception does to a family. That's good, son. But remember, there's honest and there's cruel. Don't use truth as a weapon. Like Mom did, hiding the truth for 20 years and then using it to justify leaving. Your mother didn't use truth as a weapon. She used lies as a shield. When the truth finally came out, it destroyed everything the lies had protected. Including her, especially her. Diana lives alone now in a 1-bedroom apartment in Stamford. The accountant, Robert, lasted less than a year. Apparently, he found her emotionally unavailable, which was probably the most honest assessment anyone had made of Diana in decades. She works as a freelance consultant, making enough to survive but not thrive. The kids see her monthly dutiful visits that everyone endures rather than enjoys. Last week, clearing out the garage for a yard sale, I found our wedding album. Diana had left it behind, probably deliberately. I flipped through it, looking at our young faces, searching for signs of what was to come. Diana's smile seemed forced in some photos, genuine in others. My face was consistently radiant, a man who thought he'd won the lottery. In the last photo, we were running toward the limo, guests throwing rice, Diana's hand in mine. She was looking back at the crowd, laughing. But now I could see what I'd missed then. She wasn't looking at our cheering friends and family. She was looking past them, at someone or something else. Maybe at Jake, who supposedly couldn't make it to the wedding. Maybe at the life she was leaving behind. Maybe at the future she'd already given up. I kept one photo, not of us, but of Brandon and Melissa at the reception, ages 3 and 1, the flower girl and ring bearer we'd borrowed from friends because we'd waited to have our own kids. They were perfect and innocent and unaware that they were props in their mother's performance of happiness. I kept it to remind myself that something good came from those 22 years of deception. Grace found me looking at it. Regrets? She asked. Number just wondering. If I could go back, knowing what I know now, would I still marry her? Would you? I thought about Brandon and Melissa, about Sophie, about the life I'd built from the ruins Diana left behind, about Grace and her boys, about second chances and radical honesty. Yes, I said, but this time I'd dig up the time capsule on the right date. Grace laughed. And if you found out the truth, then I'd have had 20 more years to build something real with someone else. Or 20 more years alone. Better alone with truth than together with lies. That's what I've learned from the time capsule, from Diana's 22-year deception, from the collapse of everything I thought I knew. Truth, however painful, gives you choices. Lies steal them. Diana stole 22 years of my choices, but finding that coffee can in the basement gave them back to me. The sound of shovel hitting metal still wakes me sometimes. In my dreams, I rebury it immediately, choose ignorance, continue the comfortable lie. But even in dreams, I know that's not who I am anymore. I'm the man who digs up the truth, faces it, and builds something genuine from whatever remains. The basement where I found the time capsule is now Grace's art studio. She paints there most mornings, creating beauty where I once discovered ugliness. Sometimes I watch her work, grateful for the bizarre journey that led us to each other. She knows my whole story, has heard about Diana and Jake and the pregnancy and the 22 years of lies. She's shared her own. The debt her husband hid, the addiction she discovered only after his death, the affairs she suspected but never confirmed. We're both refugees from deception, she said once. Maybe that's why we work. Or maybe we work because we've learned to spot the signs. What signs am I showing? She asked, teasing but also serious. Contentment, I said. Actual, genuine contentment. It looks nothing like what I thought it did. She kissed me then, and I thought about how different it felt from Diana's kisses, those performed acts of affection that I'd mistaken for love. Grace's kisses were communications, not performances. They said things like, I choose you, and I'm here, and this is real. The time capsule taught me that we bury things for reasons, sometimes to preserve them, sometimes to hide them, sometimes because we don't know what else to do with them. Diana buried the truth about Jake and the pregnancy because she thought it would poison our future. Instead, the buried truth poisoned our entire marriage, seeping into every moment like that water damage in the basement walls. Now I don't bury anything. Every doubt, every fear, every moment of distance gets excavated immediately. Grace calls it emotional archaeology. constantly digging to make sure we're building on solid ground. It's exhausting sometimes, but it's honest. And after 22 years of comfortable lies, exhausting honesty feels like freedom. Next month will mark 7 years since I found the time capsule. 7 years since my shovel hit metal and changed everything. Brandon and Amy are expecting their second child. Melissa just got engaged to a fellow journalist who she made read her entire series on financial infidelity before their third date. Grace's boys are both in college now, calling me for advice about everything from student loans to girl troubles. Diana sent a message through Brandon last week. She wants to create a new time capsule with the kids and grandkids, something for Sophie and her future siblings to open in 20 years. A chance to create better memories, she said. What do you think, Dad? Brandon asked. I think the past should stay buried, I said, and the future should stay unwritten. All we really have is the present, and that's enough. He agreed. They'll do their own time capsule, just as family, without the ghost of the past haunting it. They'll bury their hopes and dreams and predictions, and in 20 years, they'll dig them up and either laugh or cry at how wrong they were. But whatever they discover, it will be built on truth, the sound of shovel hitting metal. Such a small sound to end a marriage, to destroy a family, to reveal 22 years of deception. But also the sound that freed me, that gave me back my agency, that led me to grace and honesty and a life built on solid ground. Sometimes I dream about that moment, about what would have happened if I'd hit stone instead of metal, if the time capsule had been buried just a foot to the left or right. Would Diana and I still be married, living our lie? Would she have eventually left me for someone else when Jake discarded her? Would I have grown old, never knowing I was someone's safe second choice? I'll never know. All I know is the sound of metal on metal, the weight of a coffee, can full of secrets, the moment when the past collided with the present and changed the future entirely. That sound was my ending, but it was also my beginning. The death of one life and the birth of another. The destruction of a lie and the construction of truth, the sound of shovel hitting metal, the sound of freedom,